Eagle. I would now like to welcome my next guest, who we usually see most Fridays here at the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center, Frank Carini.
Hello.
EcoRI.
Yes.
How are you today, sir?
Good, thanks.
Very good. What's new in the EcoRI world?
That's a good question. I just listening to the guest before me, my mind was kind of shot.
North Korea, national politics.
Yeah, we're not doing anything with North Korea. Well, the potential risks there, but
you got a lot of stuff. Good week on EcoRI, and I've got my laundry list of things I want to talk about, pick your brain about.
Okay.
Let's start with Deepwater Wind. Their ability to have battery potential on their wind turbines. What does this mean?
That's what everybody's striving to get. You got to be able to store the energy that the sun produces or the wind, and I'm sure the tech's going to get there. So Deepwater Wind, obviously, they put up the first offshore wind farm in the country, so they're going to be on the forefront of this new tech. But that's what we need. Granted, it's going to come at a cost. God knows how we're going to create it and all that other stuff, and what's going to be needed to build these batteries. But that's what we need. So
that's I kind of saw a picture of these. Not like oversized Duracell batteries. So what is it going to take? So if it can fill up a battery, does that battery then, how does that go from the next stage from being stored in the battery to being utilized for other purposes?
That's a little beyond my pay grade for answer that question. That's way, way beyond what I'm capable of writing about. Obviously, you can be able to store it though, so you don't have to use it right away. It doesn't have to be. It stays around longer. It's important. We're going to have to get there, and we will get there, I'm sure. But
is that so? You said, has that kind of been the holy grail of wind? How to store it?
Yeah, that's the holy grail of how to store the renewable energies, wind, solar. A lot of that. The people that are against them or don't like the idea always say, "Oh, the sun's not always shining, the wind's not always blowing, so how do we store this energy?"
Well, we saw
that's
that.
part of the equation.
Read that on EcoRI if you have interest in wind energy and how they might move that forward.
Yeah, if you want to, you'll bring in Tim to talk about that, because all I know is what I've read in his story. That's not my
Frank
expertise.
is the editor.
If I have an area of expertise, which I'm not even sure I do, energy certainly isn't.
Well, let's go from energy. Let's go over to the water a little bit, and water and land.
Sure.
What's the issue with the commercial trawling and its environmental impact?
Yeah, Todd McLeish had written a story for us recently about a URI professor. I can't even think of his name now.
You got to read EcoRI?
Yeah, Cawley. I can't even think of his first name. Anyway, Mr. Cawley, Professor Cawley had done a story looking at the different ways of bottom trawling and the effects they're having on fragile ecosystems. They rip apart things, but they found that they have a real big problem in localized areas. So if you can avoid those areas, and then different ones have, like New England apparently uses otter trawling, which I don't think is to catch otters. Let's hope not.
But that's what it's called.
That's what it's called, and actually that's used a lot in New England according to Todd's story, and that is the least, has the less impact on all the other
So
ones.
we're doing well, comparatively, I guess you would say.
Yeah, comparatively, when you're wrecking habitat when you're trawling and you're ripping up the forebottom. So we just got to, at least we know what areas we should avoid, and at least we're thinking about it and talking about it. So it's important.
Well, that's where research comes into play.
Exactly.
So at least you know, as
Jeremy
you pointed
Cawley.
out. I'm sorry?
Jeremy Cawley's his name.
Jerry Cawley at URI, again, talking about the impact. How big is the trawling industry, and how big politically? When you have these things, if you say, you really shouldn't go to these coordinates, do the communities work together, the environmental community and the fishing trawling community?
I'm sure they do in some extent. I know fishermen, they're not trawling, but they care, and they're smaller operations, small boats and stuff, but they care and they talk about it. The higher you get up, the bigger the industry is.
Yeah.
Just like big ag on land, same thing. Big ag on the water, if you will. They're not, they're going to have more political clout. It doesn't mean that the people doing the job don't care about the environment. Just that the higher up you get there with multinationals, it's all about profit.
Good read. Check it out on ecori.org. Speaking of things being kicked up, the contaminated dirt found at the proposed LNG site in Providence.
Yes, that's what people are really concerned about. More about that than they are about that site that they want to put the LNG.
A brownfield, I'm sure.
It's probably even closer to Superfund, but it's nasty. It has a lot of contaminants from fossil fuel. As Tim wrote, on unchecked fossil fuel activities for years, decades down there. So it's a mess down there, and the neighborhood, rightfully so, is concerned about, you're going to dig it up, what precautions are you gonna use, we're digging it up to make a mess to bring in more fossil fuel. But the people are more concerned about the unearthing of all that nasty stuff than they are maybe about the LNG facility per se, but.
What happens in those scenarios, generally speaking? Again, if the LNG facility weren't proposed at that location, but somehow someone had gone on that piece of land and found the contaminated soil, do you still address it? I mean,
Oh yeah, you could just, depends what it was, you could just cap it. I'm sure it's been capped, that's the problem. Now they want to uncap it to release all that stuff. Yeah, everybody knows it's a nasty site, so anybody that wanted to, nobody's going to buy it to build a house.
No.
But anybody that's going to use that is going to have to do some work for it, unless they just want to, park cars on it or something, I don't know. So yeah, it's going to, we allowed this mess to be created, now we have to deal with it.
Where are we exactly? If folks have been following this a little bit, they keep hearing the LNG proposal down in Providence along Allen's Ave there. Where are we in the process?
Right now, CRMC is looking at it, and they're due, they're going to have some meetings in September or October. I think their final report is due at the end of October.
Okay.
But they're not the ones that okay it. Ultimately, it's going to be the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC.
FERC, if you will.
It's up to FERC. So where that stands with FERC, I don't know, but it's got to jump through all these local hoops first. And then
So it sounds like we're not quite close.
it'll probably get rammed down the throats of the neighborhood.
But in what time frame are we talking here?
Oh, I don't know. So maybe by the end of the year we'd know if it's a go or not, and then you got to do the construction and all that.
So if Grid says we need this LNG facility, and the neighbors clearly say everyone, I'm sure is is it just who's got the better fight of not in my backyard? If it wasn't here, I mean, I'm not asking you to be some sort of soothsayer as to where it could potentially go, but there has to be obviously the input from the neighbors. I mean, is there any place that could go that people would be like, oh, that's fine?
No, I doubt that. No, I mean, it's fossil fuels. Why are we building more fossil fuel infrastructure when we should be going the other way? But no, there's no. I guess if they were building it down there on the industrial waterfront, and they weren't digging up this nasty pit, maybe that'd be a little more agreeable. But again, it's fossil fuels. I mean, if they were digging that up to put in the solar panels, I think the conversation would be a little bit different, or putting in a turbine or something. But you're digging up nasty, all this nasty stuff from fossil fuel industry to put in more fossil fuel. It's stupid.
On top of this a little bit, I'm going down my list here. I'm trying to see if I have additional ones as well. Anything else this week that you think we should be hitting upon that I didn't in my little laundry list over here?
No, you usually do a pretty good job. You actually know better than I do what's on the website, even though I read everything.
You've gone through and you've edited it. You know everything. Don't try.
I've read everything. Doesn't mean I know anything.
And you have a fundraiser, another fundraiser coming up, the No Trash Bash.
Oh yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Joanna keeps saying, "Why don't you plug that?" I'm like, I always forget. So thank you.
I think I saw like a Facebook ad for it. So
yes, and you guys are running advertisements for us. Thank you.
Very good.
Yeah, September 8th. I'm not involved in that side of it. But yes, September 8th is our Zero Trash Birthday Bash, our 8th one, or technically our 7th one. The first year we didn't have one. But yeah, there's gonna be 4 bands at the Fet.
Wow.
And I forgot. I think the tickets are $45. I can't remember that.
And there's going to be no trash created.
No, the Julian's does the food, so they compost everything they use, and then we have plates, no paper. Yeah, there's no trash, or very, 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 very little. No trash. No trash. That's tough to pull off. I'm not gonna. It's very little. Very, very.
Very little trash bash.
Yes, very little trash bash.
I have just renamed EcoRI's fundraiser.
It's pretty close to 0, but there's going to be something I missed, so you don't want to say.
Itsy
I don't be lying.
bitsy, very little trash bash.
Yeah, right.
Now, Joanna was in here. We were talking about recycling a few weeks ago, and she made the pronouncement. Maybe we have to just rethink the whole thing. Is it just that difficult to be able to recycle effectively? And is it just so cost prohibitive when it's not, and they have to reject loads? Do we really have to rethink about as a nation and a world, our approach to trash and recycling?
Well, Joanna also being my wife and living with her for 15 years or so, I don't remember. It's less about, thankfully she's in San Francisco, she's probably not watching, but it's more of, her concern is recycling makes people feel better, even though that's what really gets, not that she's against it and we do it at home. But I think we have to get beyond and get to reusing and reducing than recycling. Not that recycling is bad, but that should just be a tiny part of what we need to do. And now it's kind of seen as the oh, it's the only thing we can do. You know, it's overhyped, putting words into Joanna's mouth. But I agree. I think it's, like I said, reducing and reusing is more important than recycling. Not that we shouldn't recycle, but.
And what do you think, I mean, just tips to the average person who, if they think they're putting their Coke bottle and their milk bottle in the in the recycle bin, that they're doing their bit, to go above and beyond, but in a way that, you know, the average person could think about making a few little tweaks?
You just try to buy less plastic. It's hard. I mean, I make an effort to do it, and it's hard. Like, you want to buy soap, and I don't want to buy all the soap wrapped in plastic, and I just buy a bars of soap. I mean, it matters. If it makes a difference, plastic, try to reduce your plastic usage. And obviously we need to use plastic, but there's so much of it, so much packaging. Try to buy in bulk or use those, you know, those canvas bags or whatever bags you can put your fruit in, or nuts or whatever. And, you know, I get a billion of these when I go shopping because Joanna's got all those bags. I get bags all over the place. But
So you use more of the reusable bags.
more reusable bags. Try to be mindful when you're buying stuff. If it's all wrapped
Packaging.
in plastic, maybe you don't need that deodorant that's wrapped in a plastic thing when it's in a plastic thing anyway. You know?
Remember like the old, like the CDs and the remember the tape cassettes that were in the extra
Yeah, so you wouldn't steal it. Exactly. So
Now we're dating ourselves.
but people are like, oh, cassettes, what are those?
Well, I think we've just about hit upon everything we're trying to hit